Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into the final polling roundup and the UK general election prediction video from the Gavin Partridge YouTube channel. So we are literally now on the eve of polling day, and we have had numerous either polls, opinion polls that we're going to be looking at. So many released through the day. This is by far the most active day of polling that I have ever known in the UK general election. You normally get a lot of polls on the eve of the poll, but the number of polls we've had today, regular polls and MRPs, has been quite extraordinary. We will go through as many of them as we can for this video. If I happen to miss any of them out, it is purely because, it's just so many to get through. But I will try to go through all of them for you. And we'll start off having a look at the most recent prediction from electoral calculus for the next general election. So please like, share and subscribe if you are enjoying this video and have enjoyed this season of polling roundups for this general election. We're pretty much, as I say, at the end now, and once we get through these polls, all that's left really is for all of you to have your say on what you're going to vote for when polls open, or polling stations open tomorrow at 7 a.m. Right, well, here we go then. So for the final time for the 2024 general election in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom! There we go. That's the prediction from electoral calculus as of the 30th of July. I thought I might update this today, but they have not so far. They might update it tomorrow, but I won't be doing a video tomorrow, not while polls are open. Anyway, I might do a video quickly talking about the exit poll after 10 o'clock, but until 10 o'clock I won't do any videos tomorrow. But as of the 30th of June, electoral calculus were predicting a Labour majority of 290 seats. They were predicting the Conservatives to be on 19.9% of vote, 20% of vote, with central seat prediction of 61 seats. Margin of error could take to 157 at the high end and at the low end down to just 22. Labour on a predicted share of vote of 39.7. Note they just have Labour under 40% now. That will be rounded up to 40%, giving them a central prediction of 470 seats. High end, they could be as high as 510. At the low end, 331. That still gets them an overall majority above 326 for a majority. Liberal Democrats 0.2% down on what they got in 2019 at 11.6, but look at this, 71 seats central prediction, and replacing the Conservatives as the main opposition party. At the high end as high as 83, at the low end as low as 50. If a prediction from electoral calculus is right, I'm dubious about it, but if this prediction from electoral calculus is right, then the Liberal Democrats will be replacing the Conservatives as the official opposition, and Sir Ed Davey will become the leader of the opposition. Extraordinary prediction, and I will be very surprised if we see that, but that's what electoral calculus is forecast there. Reform on 17%, with a central seat prediction of 7 seats. Very large range, though. They could be as high as 89 seats and as low as 5 seats. Greens with 6% on a central prediction of 3 seats. They could be as high as 5. They could be as low as 1. SNP on a central prediction of 3%, which gives them 15 seats. They could be as high as 36. They could be as low as 6. Really bad result on that central prediction for the SNP. And Plaid on 3 seats. Could be as high as 5. Could be as low as 2. Others on 2 seats. Could be as high as 3. And could be as low as none. And as I say, a central seat prediction of an overall majority, central seat prediction for Labour 470, an overall majority of 290 seats. Right, well, let's go. So that's from electoral calculus. Let's go through all the polls that have been released then. So there are a couple that turned up last night, actually, after we signed off on last night's penultimate polling roundup. So we had Verian turn up just here. That showed up last night, giving Labour 36, Conservatives 21, Liberal Democrats 13. the SNP 3, Greens 7, and Reform 16%, and an overall Labour lead of 15% there with Varian. There's also a poll from Lord Ashcroft that showed up. Now, Lord Ashcroft isn't part of a British polling council. I would not normally include a Lord Ashcroft poll in these videos, because they normally just focus on British polling council member pollsters. I will, though, quickly go through this one. Now, Lord Ashcroft had the Conservatives on 19%, Labour on 38%, the Liberal Democrats on 11%, SNP on 3%, Greens on 8%, Reform on 18%, just one behind the Conservatives, and an overall Labour lead of 19%. Right, so let's start going through today's poll. So the day kicked off with Survation. For Good Morning Britain, that's the first poll released this morning. This is a standard voting intention poll. It's a phone poll as well, so it's a little bit unusual. Most polling these days is done online, but one or two of the polls still do bone polling. I think Ipsos do. Survation is another one. And they found, in this standard, remember, not MRP, their MRP poll was released yesterday, but Survation found that the Conservatives were on 18%. And they had Labour on 38%, they had the Liberal Democrats on 11%, they had the SNP on 3%, the Greens were on 7%, and Reform were on 17%, and overall Labour lead there with Survation of 20%. Back for that Good Morning Britain poll. We dealt with Redfield and Wilton, I believe. Now, did we do Techney? I think we did Techney, didn't we? I'm sure we did that last night. So the next poll is BMG for the I. They have the Conservatives on 22%, Labour on 39%. Notice in a lot of these polls, Labour are dipping down under 40% now. Liberal Democrats on 11%, SNP on 3%, Greens on 7%, Reform on 16%. Overall, Labour lead of 17%. People polling was the next poll for GB News. They found the Conservatives on just 16%, lowest of all the pollsters. Labour also the lowest of all the pollsters on 36%. They have the Liberal Democrats on 10%, SNP on 4%, Greens on 9%, and Reform ahead of the Conservatives on 20%. That is an overall Labour lead over Reform, not the Conservatives, of 16% there. A Delta poll was the next poll that appeared, standard voting intention poll, and they have the Conservatives on 22%, Labour on 39%, Liberal Democrats on 10%, SNP on 2%, they have Greens on 7%, Reform on 17%, others on 3%, and an overall Labour Delta poll of 17%. Opinion was the next pollster to turn up. They normally only poll at weekends for the Observer, but they did do a final eve of poll, and they found the Conservatives on 21%, Labour on 41%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, SNP on 2%, Greens on 7%, Reform on 17%, overall Labour lead of 20%. And then we had We Think turn up with a standard voting intention poll. Conservatives on 23%, Labour on 41%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, SNP on 2%, Greens on 7%, Reform on 15%, and an overall Labour lead of 18%. And then finally, Savanta, well, actually not quite finally for standard voting intention, but Savanta did turn up as well, with the Conservatives on 20%, Labour on 39%, Liberal Democrats on 10%, SNP on 2%, Greens on 5%, Reform 17%, and still that high others total 17%. Overall, they have a Labour lead of 19%. Let's just refresh, because there has been one more poll, but it's not been added to the list yet. So Norstat, with a standard voting intention poll, has the Conservatives on 24%, up 1 on their last poll. They have Labour on 37%, down 2 on their last poll. The Liberal Democrats on 11%, down 1 on their last poll. Reform on 16%, up 1 on their last poll. And they have got Greens on 6%, on their last poll. So that is an overall Labour lead, I think, of 13%. So that's the lowest overall, I think, of any pollster, actually. Let's go back here. I don't think there's been any polls that have had Labour as low as a 13% lead over the Conservatives. So a bit of a shocker there from Norstat. And then there's been a lot of MRP polling showing up as well. Remember, this is where they feed standard voting intentions into a model to create a seat-by-seat prediction. And we have had 3 MRPs showing up today. So we have had Yuga just here. They have the Conservatives on 22%, Labour on 39%, the Democrats on 12%. They have the SNP on 3%. Greens on 10%, Reform on 15%, overall Labour leaders 17% with the final YouGov MRP. There's also been a more in common MRP that showed up with Conservatives on 23%, Labour on 39%, Liberal Democrats on 14%. I will show you in a moment what all this means on a seat-by-seat basis. Liberal Democrats on 14%, SNP 2%, Greens 6%, Reform 13%, overall Labour lead with the more in common MRP of 16%. And then focal data as well. And their MRP have Conservatives on 23%, Labour on 40%, Liberal Democrats on 12%, SNP on 3%. It's mind-boggling, this, isn't it? Greens on 5%, Reform on 16%, and overall Labour lead with focal data of 19%. There was also a JL Partners SRP part, but I don't know much about, but I will show you the seat numbers on that as well. That hasn't, I don't think, been added to this table yet. Anyway, let's have a look at what some of that means. So starting off with focal data, their MRP poll shows that, or predicts, the forecast is for Labour to have 444 seats by Friday morning. So they've got Labour on 444. That is down 6. Oops, that's down 6 on their last MRP poll. Focal data have the Conservatives on 108 seats, hanging on to official opposition status, but it's down 2 on their last MRP poll. Absolutely catastrophic result. But they do just about hang on to opposition status. They've got the Democrats on 57 seats. That is 7 up on their last MRP poll. SNP on 15 seats. That is down 1 on the last focal data MRP poll. Reform on just 2 seats, but that is up 1 on the last MRP poll. They've got Plaid on 2 seats, unchanged, and Greens on 1 seat, and that is unchanged on their last MRP poll as well. And that would be a Labour majority well over 200 seats. And then, of course, there was more in common. So the more in common MRP poll has Labour on 430 seats, the Conservatives on 126 seats. Oh, and this is how things have changed from the last general election, by the way. So the changes from the last general election. Labour on 430 seats, that is up 228 seats on the last election in 2019. Conservatives on 126 seats, that is down 239 on the 2019 general election. Complete collapse there for Conservatives, but still hanging on to opposition status. Liberal Democrats on 52 seats, that is up 41 on the last election. SNP on just 16 seats, that's down 32 on the last election. Reform on 2 seats, that is up 2 on the last election, as they didn't have any seats at the last election. Greens on 1 seat, unchanged. Plaid on 2 seats, down 2, and others on 2. That is up 2. I don't think they include the Northern Irish parties in that. And then there has been the JLP SRP model projection, and this is what they're predicting. For that, with changes on last week, they've got Labour on 442, which is down 8. They have got Conservatives on 111 seats, which is up 6 on the last poll. They've got the Liberal Democrats on 58, which is up 1 on the last poll. They have got the SNP on 15 unchanged, Plaid on 3 unchanged, Reform on just 1 seat with JL Partners SRP, despite, piling up lots and lots of votes, not getting any seats, or only getting 1 seat, and Green on 1 seat as well. An overall Labour majority of 234, which is down 16 on the last JL Partners SRP poll. But, 234 seats would still be the biggest landslide that we've seen in this country for many, many, many years, probably going back to 1832. And then we've also had the Yuga MRP, and they're saying that their final MRP showing Labour is on course for a historic election victory. They have Labour on 431 seats, which is up 229 on the last general election. Conservatives down to 102, worst result of all of the MRP, so Conservatives just 102 seats, but it's down 263 seats from the 2019 general election. Liberal Democrats on 72 seats, which is up 61 on the last general election. And the Liberal Democrats are closer with Yuga than any other pollster to replacing the Conservatives as the official opposition. Note, the Conservatives are still ahead by, I think that's 30 seats, isn't it? The Conservatives are still ahead by 30 seats of the Liberal Democrats in terms of who becomes the official opposition and leader of the opposition. But the Liberal Democrats are closer to the Conservatives than any other pollster with Yuga's MRP. They've got the SNP on 18, which is 18 seats, which is down 30 on the last election. They have Reform up to 3 seats, which is up 3 on the last general election. Plaid on 3 seats, which is down 1, and Greens on 2, which is up 1 on the last general election. With that MRP. Let's come back and have a look at the polling graph one last time. So Labour's trend line has dropped, from where it was start of the election, roughly around 45%. It has gone. The trend line's out actually just ticked under 40%. So their trend line is like 38, 39%, something like that. The Conservatives have ticked up, but their tick up, but we saw yesterday, has reduced. So their little blue tick up there has kind of shrunk back, but they have ticked up very slightly. But nevertheless, there's still a very, very large gap between Labour and the Conservatives. Probably not 20% now, it's probably more like 17, 18%. But that is still enough, for an incredible Labour majority. Liberal Democrats, trend line ticked down slightly. Reform looked pretty stable. They didn't get to cross over with the Conservatives, but they weren't all that far from it. But they was a little bit short of crossover with the Reform Conservative trend line. Greens and SNP quite stable down here. If we have a look at the graph since the election was called, that's it just there. So this is what has happened through this general election. Notice Labour start off at 45%. They have now just ticked under 40%, so Labour have lost ground through this general election. Conservatives started off very close to about 25%, probably about 24%. At one point, they went down to about 20%. They're probably ticked up to about 22% now. So as I say, the gap between Labour and Conservatives has probably gone from being about 20% to about 17%. Reform started off about 10%. They lifted up and was at one point threatening crossover, I think, with the Conservatives around the middle of June. They have dropped back a little bit. There has been a little bit of a drop back from for Reform, but still quite significantly above where they started this election campaign. They're roughly around 15% now. The Liberal Democrats, they were under 10% at the start of this campaign. They lifted up to about 12%, 12, 13%. They're probably back down to about 11% now, which is exactly where they were in the last election. But bear in mind, they are much more targeted with this election. So they are targeting specific seats, Conservative to Liberal Democrat seats in the South East and in the southwest, which is why, despite their overall national share of the vote not improving much from 2019, they are look to be on course, if these MRPs are correct anyway, these models, they look to be on course through tactical voting for a very substantially higher result in seats, and still not totally impossible that they could replace the Conservatives as the official opposition, but I think that prospect has receded a little bit, actually. I think that is it was always quite a low probability. I think it is an even lower probability now. I think the Conservatives probably will hang on to official opposition status, famous last words. Greens started off somewhere close to about 6%. They're ending up roughly about 7%, so not much movement really for the Greens. But again, through tactical voting, they could well pick up a couple of extra seats compared to what they got in 2019. And the SNP down here somewhere about 3%. That's roughly where they still are, because they're a Scotland-only party, so they don't tend to move around quite as much. Right, so the last thing, shall I give you my prediction? This is like taking your life into your hands, really. So back to electoral calculus, and let's see if this loads. Electoral calculus has been running very, very slowly today. That's the only thing, so this might not work. There we go, make your prediction. Okay, so I shall say, this is a complete stab in the dark, really. I am going to say that the Conservatives are on 24%. And I'm going to say that Labour finish up on 39%. Oops, not 309, 39%. I think the Liberal Democrats probably remain about 11%. Reform, that's a difficult one. Where are Reform going to be? I think Reform will probably be about 15% in the end, and I would say that the Greens are likely to get about 7%. So let's see what electoral calculus does. But again, it's a complete stab in the dark, So if this is totally wrong, don't tell me off on Friday morning. Let's see where we end up with that. National share of the vote. Let's hope this loads, or the video is going to end on a damn squib, isn't it? If this doesn't load. As I say, electoral counts have been running very, very slowly today, so this possibly isn't going to work. You just chat amongst yourselves. Oh dear, look at that, site can't be reached. Everybody is trying to calculate their own thoughts and predictions. Let's have another go, shall we? This might not work. Let's see if it will or not. This is without a Scotland prediction, without tactical voting as well, by the way. So, whatever this shows, particularly for Liberal Democrats, I will put more onto the Liberal Democrat score. Is it going to come up? 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 Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I should have got this all loaded up before I start the polling round, should I? Thank you so much, everybody, by the way, as we end on a little bit of fun. Thank you so much, everybody, for embracing these polling videos. This is very... there we go. This is very different to what I do, which is the weather, what I do for my day job. So, on my shares of the vote, which is, remember, Conservatives 24%, Labour 39%, Liberal Democrats 10%, Reform 5%, Greens 7%, SNP 3%. We have the Conservative on 93 seats, losing 283. We have Labour on 444, gaining 247 seats. We have the Liberal Democrats on 67, going up 59. Bear in mind, there could be a little bit more added on to that, because I did include tactical voting. Reform on 5 seats, which is up 5. Greens on 3 seats, which is up 2. And SNP on 15 seats, which is down 33. Plaid on 3 seats, which is up 1. Others on 2, which is up 2. And the Northern Irish parties, remember, Sinn Féin don't take their seats, though, but Northern Irish parties on 18, an overall Labour majority of 233. So my stab in the dark is pretty well in line with most of the MRPs, actually. And as I say, I think that would be the biggest majority government There is the exception of 1931, which was a very different election because all of the parties, it was like Labour and the Liberals split and joined the Conservatives to form a national government. It was a very different election. So for just one outright party, I think that would be the biggest overall majority that we've seen. Maybe since 1906, but probably since about 1832. An extraordinary general election that would be. If my prediction is out there, please be kind. Please be kind to me. And anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So that's it. That is your Eve of Poll polling roundup and prediction. Well, that's it. There will be an Ipsos poll tomorrow. I won't do a video on that, but I might post the numbers with that into the community page. So if anybody would like to know about the Ipsos poll tomorrow, I'll probably post the numbers into the community page. I won't do a video on that. I might do a video on tomorrow night after the exit poll is revealed, just go through the exit poll. And then there'll probably be a video popping up on Friday or Saturday going over the results, and how the opinion polls did, how my prediction did, maybe, compared to, what actually happened. But the talking is pretty much over now. All of the party leaders will be back to their constituencies and to their homes, and it's down to all of you now. So there's not much left to say other than tomorrow you will all be casting your votes, or those of you that want to. Maybe you've got to take your photo ID to the polling stations because you now have to take my photo IDs, that's passport, driving licence, etc, etc, etc. And we shall see. 10 p.m. the exit poll will drop, and then we will get our first indication of what has happened. And just say thank you so much for embracing these polling videos over the past 6 weeks. I know I had to take a couple of weeks off, which was very annoying when I was in hospital, but we picked it back up again, and we've had a bit of fun, especially on this final video. So if you have enjoyed these polling roundups, previous general election, please like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. It's been a very, very, very long video. I'm so sorry, but there's so much to get through. Nearly half an hour. Goodness gracious. So thank you so much for sticking with it, and we'll end it there. So tomorrow is the day of the 2024 general election. Whatever the outcome, whatever the results, I hope you enjoy it. If you're watching election night and whatnot, then enjoy going to the polling station and casting your vote. It's worth remembering that people have died, for us to do this, and the franchise got expanded over the years, the decades, of the centuries, so that we could all have this opportunity to be able to go to the polling stations and cast our view on who should run the country, and what their policies should be. So I think it's an important thing to vote, but I do understand that if people don't want to vote, they should have the opportunity to sit it out and not vote. I'm not one that thinks that people should be forced to vote, and I would like to have a none of the above box as well on the ballot, but that will never happen because none of the above will win by a landslide every election, I suspect. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. Thank you so much for watching this video and for sticking with this season of polling roundup video series general election. And this time tomorrow, as I say, we will know what has happened. For this one though, that's all for now, and thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.